This is a little bit of a video on what you should include in your analysis discussion for your inferences unit. 4 credits, so you should study hard on this. For your features, you'll get prompted in your assessment, but there is 6 different types of things you should try and comment on. You should try and go into depth in at least 3. You might not be able to include all. It might not be easy to talk about shift, depending on how your results look. So you should have an idea of what each of these are, but you don't always have to talk about every one, but you have to include at least 3. I'm going to give a few examples of each of them. And this is just examples. There are a lot more than what I'm going to show you. But yeah, you can have a look. So shift is when, so for example this one, I'm going to talk about the middle 50%. This middle 50% here looks about the same as the middle 50% here, except for it's just moved up the scale a bit. So I would say it's something along the lines of, for shift, I noticed that the arm spans, because these are arm spans, year 12 boys have shifted further up the scale. So here's the scale, and it's shifted further up the scale than those of the year 12 girls. So that's an example. Shift is a little bit of a weird one because it hasn't necessarily shifted. It's a completely different set of sample, but that's what it's called by shift. And I noticed that there is no overlap. This isn't talking about shift, but it's nice to know. Notice there's no overlap of the middle 50%. These don't overlap. That's normally an indicator that one is one median is definitely bigger than the other, even though it is a sample and is only a guess of the population. Alright, second part here, center. So I noticed that the informal confidence intervals of the 2 samples do not overlap. Of course, you might have they do overlap. That's one of our most important ones. You should try and comment on that. It's pretty easy to have a little look at. Spread. This is how much this data is spread out. You can compare the whole range, minimum to maximum, but probably more accurately you could, or more consistently, from sample to sample, you would compare the middle 50%, so between the median, the quartiles. So for the spread in this case, I noticed that the middle 50% of the arm span of year 12 boys, I suppose you can read it, this is the boys at the top, is about the same as the middle 50% of the year 12 girls. If they weren't about the same, just say that they weren't about the same, like they do on this one. Shape. So the shape of the data, you normally look at your dot plot to see this. If you've got numbers spread out, it might look like they're just uniformly spread out, but you can sort of, if you group them together, you might see a bit of a shape like this. So you've got symmetric distribution. We quite often call this a bell-shaped curve, which is what you would expect for things like height. Most of the people have a median height. Some people are freakishly tall and some people are freakishly short, but they're not very common. Most people are about the middle. You could have right skewed distribution, so it's a little bit opposite to what you think. This is the right hand side. There's not much data here. This is talking about the mean being on the right hand side of the median. So if the data is all here on the left, it's skewed to the right. If the data is here all on the right, it's skewed to the left. Just yeah, there's a couple of other things you could talk about. Quite easy things to talk about when you look at your dot plot. It'd be nice to hear those. So it might look something like this. You can read through that. It's going to point out this has got some of that sort of excellence, statistical insight that you might be looking for. This one's got a bit of everything. But this, you would expect it to be skewed to the right because there's a minimum wage with most people, well, not most, but there's be a lot of people down there. You can't be any lower than that. And there's some people with some freakishly high incomes, but you don't have the freakishly low because of that minimum wage. So yeah, normally it would be skewed to the right. point estimate. This is just looking from one point to another. I've got a few of these. This is just comparing, so in this case this is comparing the median of something to the lower, no, I don't know what it is, median for the personal incomes is lower than the sample lower quartile. So this is comparing the median to the lower quartile. Sometimes it's quite interesting when you compare those, not just the medians. You can compare just the medians. This one's comparing the sample upper quartile. Notice how it's talking about the sample. It's telling you that it's not always going to be the same. Should putting that in there along the line sometimes, just to get up to those next higher levels, to show that understanding that different results will give different samples will give different results. This is comparing the upper quartile with the, notice one income compared to one. Next one, again, point estimates. This is again comparing lower quartile to the minimum. And unusual features, these are normally like the extreme values. This one, there's 3 quite high wages in the extreme values, and then they go down to this 1099. So there's 3 quite, this one here is a little bit different to everything else because you haven't actually compared 2 samples. You should compare it to make it so it's valid. So compared to the people with no education, they didn't have any outliers, something along those lines. So there's a few features. You can make your own up with those sort of guidelines. You can use bits and pieces from what I've already got here, or just find somewhere else. But yeah, do use them to push you towards. To get an achieve, you've got to be basically stating your features. To get your merit, you're going to be looking for some sort of justification. Why do you think that those are? Where did you get that information from? Maybe you got it from looking at your bar graph, or you didn't do a bar graph, so you did a dot plot, or maybe you got the spread based on your data that you calculated, or maybe you got it from your box and whisker graph. So just some sort of justification. For excellence, you're looking for that statistical insight, which include things like does it make sense? Can you put that into context? And does that make sense to you? Would you have thought that was the case, or would you have thought that it would look something different? And all the way through your analysis, you should be talking about the sample variation. If I took one sample, compare it to another sample, you will get different results, but do you expect that to be about the same every time? Minimum, maximum, you'd expect quite a bit of variance, a bit of change, but yeah, something along those lines, just to push you up to those next levels. If you have any questions, come and see, or just study up. Good luck.